Hi, I'm Leon, the founder of Audio Advice. This video is going to be all about how to mount a new phono cartridge on your turntable. Now, I've been doing this a very long time. As a matter of fact, I think I'm coming up on the 50th year I've been messing around with phono cartridges. And I'll never forget trying to mount my first one. I was terrified. If you just gather up the right tools, get some good lighting, and a comfortable workplace, you'll be able to do this. Trust me, you can do it. You just have to be very careful. And I'm going to go over all the tips on how to do it. I'm going to talk about the things that can go wrong and how to fix them. So, the first step is you want to find a good workspace. You know, I've got this here at a good spot where I can actually bend down and kind of really see the cartridge leads without having to strain myself. You're also going to want to have the right tools. You want to get a really good set of needle nose pliers. I like the kind that's kind of spring loaded. It just makes them easier to hold. And you want a kind that isn't like this long or super big because you're dealing with some very small wires here. You want something that's just comfortable in your hand. These are about 20 bucks. You will probably need a little screwdriver. Don't use a really big screwdriver to undo your cartridge because you've got the risk of it slipping and scratching your tone arm. Or if it's an Allen head like this right here, you just want to have the Allen wrench that came with it. You may need either a toothpick, which we'll get into why you'd want this, or an awl, which is a little bit better in case you find the leads are a little bit compressed. So let's get into it. The first step is how to remove your old cartridge. And unless your old cartridge has a broken stylus, you're probably going to want to protect it. So we're going to put the stylus guard on that came with this. This is a Project Debut Carbon turntable, by the way. It's a pretty cool turntable. The next step is you'll get your needle nose, and you'll notice the cartridge has 4 pins on the back of it that these wires have a sleeve that goes over. Then the back part of the sleeve is flat, and that's where this tiny wire is soldered to it. These are nice in that they've got some heat shrink protection on them. Now when you go to grab these to pull it off, you want to grab it right against the end of the sleeve. You don't want to grab it back here because you could bend this and break it. Same goes when you're putting it on. I like to, when you're putting it on, grab it right here. Then for the last push, you can put it right against the back of it. So we do a little twist, and then we pull it off. And you want to do this for all 4. And these are on nice and tight too, by the way, which is nice. Okay, now we've got it off and we didn't break anything. Step 1 is finished. The next step is taking your old cartridge off, and it's either going to need an Allen wrench or probably a straight slot screwdriver. And again, get the right size tools. Don't try to save buying a little screwdriver and having a big one and scratching your turntable up. So these usually just loosen up pretty easily here. And we're going to take this off. So there we go, we're off. This is a nice one too in that it's got threaded inserts. Some cartridges will have a nut that you'll have to attach to the other side of this on the back side, but this has got a threaded insert, which is really nice. Now we're going to talk about Cartridge Wiring 101. You'll notice there's 4 wires coming off the back of your tone arm, and these are red, green, white, and blue. Luckily, there's an international coding. It's been the same way ever since I can remember for cartridges. Red is positive, right. White is positive, left. Green is negative, right. And blue is negative, left. And most cartridges will have the same colors on the back, so you know where to put the wires on your new cartridge. However, probably about 25% of them don't. So here's a very popular cartridge. It's from Grado. They've been around forever making cartridges. They make good ones. A lot of brands will do it this way. This actually has a G at the top and an H at the bottom, then just an R and an L on the back. If yours are that way, I highly recommend you take your cartridge and look at it from the side you're going to be seeing it when you mount it, and draw a little diagram that has your pins and then shows what's red, what's green, what's white, and what's blue, so you can reference that when you're trying to put these on, because trust me, these tiny little letters here are really hard to see when it's under the tone arm and you're trying to find the wire to go on there. Okay, so now we're going to mount our new cartridge, which in this case we're just putting the other one back on. But make sure the stylus guard is on. Some cartridges have a naked body and don't have a stylus guard, and you're going to want to be really super careful here. But what you want to do is just get it into the head shell and start the screws. And your new cartridge will come with the right mounting hardware, they all do. Then I find if we just go ahead and put it as close as possible to the end of the head shell, it gives us more room to work with. And actually turn it a little bit out this way as well to give me some better angle to get those wires on. So I'm just going to tighten these down. So while the colors are standardized, what isn't standardized are the size of these tiny little posts on the back of the cartridge. Some are bigger than others. And what that means is, if you had a cartridge with large posts and your new one has small ones, these are not going to fit tight. Or if your cartridge has small ones and you now have a cartridge with larger posts, these won't go on, and you'll make the mistake I've made plenty of times, is breaking these off. There's a really weak stress point on all of these right here where the flat part hits the body of the sleeve. And you can easily, if you're trying to push this onto something that won't go, you can snap it off. So that's why I recommend when we took it off, we used a flat part to pull it. But when you're putting it on, you want to make sure your pliers are just towards the back or middle of this, not back here, right here. Because if you have much pressure, this could bend and snap right off. Trust me, I've done it 20 times probably. So that's how you'll put them back on. But I want to talk about what you do if the size is off. You notice there's a little tiny slit in all of these sleeves, and that allows you to make it either bigger or smaller. You can make it smaller by compressing it with your needle nose, or you can make it larger using the toothpick or awl that I showed you before. So let's make it larger, and you can usually just do this with an awl. And all you have to do is just push in just a tiny little bit to open up the very end of it. Yeah, that's starting to open up. You can see where it's a little bit wider. You don't have to do the rest of it, because as you slide it over the post, it will expand. Okay, so that's how you make it bigger if you try it and it just won't go on. If it's too big, you're going to want to grab it like this, where your needle nose on either side symmetrically of the little slot. And it's a good idea to be safe, if you can, to just put a little toothpick in here so that you don't squish it too far. And then just squeeze towards the outer end to bring it back to the right size. Yeah, it looks about right. So now we're going to put these back on. And here we've got our green wire on top. And I'm going to grab this right here and get it right on there. Once you get it on, you can grab it by the back to push it on. And I like to start in the upper back corner, then go across. Okay, there we've got them all on. So now that we've got the cartridge mounted, we have to align it. Alignment of your phono cartridge is very important. You'll need a tool for this. Your turntable should have come with a little paper gauge that had lines on it and a grid to show you how to align it. If it didn't, you could probably download one from the turntable manufacturer's website and carefully punch out the center hole. That is harder than you might think to get it perfectly centered, because we're dealing with really fine increments here. Or we've got 3 or 4 tools on our site you can purchase. This is a Mold Fidelity Geodisc, which is a very good one. Project has a couple of alignment gauges too. There's several on the market, but if you're going to want to have some kind of gauge. So what we do is we put this on the turntable, and when we start here, we're going to want to take off the anti-skate if you've got it on. And get your tracking force just kind of in the rough range. I'm not going to go over how to balance your arm. That's other videos we've done, but just have it in a rough range of where it should be. And the idea here is to take this line and point it right at the pivot point of your tone arm, which in this case is really easy to see. I like to go ahead and take a couple of pieces of masking tape and just tape things down. I moved it slightly. Once you get it where it needs to go, so it doesn't move on you. There we go. Most gauges are going to work that way. You're going to have to aim it at something, or some will give you 2 checkpoints, and you'll just move the paper gauge around and you'll make sure your cartridges line up in each checkpoint. But they both accomplish the same thing. Now, this one has a grid on it right here that you can see. And the idea is we're trying to get the cartridge body square to that grid. It's got a tiny little dot in it, and that's where your stylus goes. Then lift up the Q lever, and at this point our cartridge is still a little bit loose in the head shell. And then after you've got it over kind of the grid, kind of squared up to it, just gently drop it down and take a look at it from the side. And you can see in this case, it's too far forward, so it's got to come back a little bit. And just do this carefully. This is the part you don't want to snap your cartridge off on. Oh, one more tip. If you're using a paper gauge, those are thin. This geodisc is the same thickness as a record. But if you're using a paper gauge, get an old record and put that on first. When in doing this, it's a good idea to get your head kind of a very similar angle that you see here on the camera shot. Your eyes are parallel to the record surface. And it looks like I lucked up and got this right in the hole this time. And when you look down on the cartridge body, you want it square to this grid. At this point, raise it up, move it back over, and we want to try to tighten it up without having it move. Just loosely. So it's a bit snug. Move it back over. As I look down on this, I can see the right side is just a tiny bit further back than the left side. So we're going to try to fix that. Now to fix that, I just barely moved the cartridge in the head shell. The nuts were tight enough that I could do that. Okay, that is perfect. That looks great. So now, raise our tone arm up again. And we want to tighten it up. Now this is another subject of debate, how tight you should make your screws. You don't want to break anything, that's the main thing. And it's easy to over tighten the type, especially that go into the cartridge body like these. I like to do them one at a time, just to kind of snug them up. Yeah, I'm just putting not a whole lot of pressure on, but it's a little hard to move now. That's tight enough. The last step is to set your vertical tracking angle. Not all turntables have vertical tracking angle. Riga turntables have to use a spacer, but you're going to change that if your new cartridge is taller or shorter than your new one, because the idea is you want your tone arm parallel to the record surface. Here's an example on this turntable. We have little set screws in the back. Once we loosen them, we can raise and lower the height of the tone arm to adjust the vertical tracking angle. So, you want to put a record on, get your cartridge over the record. Now, this arm is cool and it's got a little white stripe down the side of it. And we can look at that stripe and see if that looks parallel to the record surface, which in this case, it really does. If you have a very tapered arm tube, you're going to want to look at the top of the head shell to make sure that looks parallel. And just raise and lower it in the back very carefully. Again, every time you do that, make sure you lift up your Q lever, put it back, adjust it, use your Q lever. It's dangerous to try to use the finger lift. And we've got this just right on. Another way, if you don't trust your eyes, is to put an old record on and get a ruler. And this really only works best if your tone arm has the lines on it, but a lot do. And just make sure they're the same at each place. And you got to get down parallel with it to see, and in this case they are, so we're good. And the final step, once you've got everything lined up right, is to put your anti-skating back on. Now, pat yourself on the back. You've mounted your first Phono cartridge and you didn't break anything. That's awesome. Now, bear in mind, most new Phono cartridges take about 50 to 100 hours to break in. So if it sounds shrill to start with, don't worry about it. It will smooth out over time. Thanks for watching. If you've got any questions at all about home theater or home audio in general, please reach out to us at audioadvice.com via chat, email, or phone, or visit one of our stores in the Carolinas. We'd appreciate if you really like this video, subscribe to our channel and click that bell so you know when we put out more new videos, which we try to do about 2 a week. Thanks for watching.